What if the greatest secret in Meghan Markle's story wasn't about her royal exit or the infamous feud with the palace, but about something far more shocking? Imagine this. Toronto, 2011. Meghan wasn't yet the Duchess of Sussex. She wasn't sitting across Oprah in that viral interview. She wasn't the woman walking hand in hand with Prince Harry into Windsor Castle. No, she was a working actress, juggling scripts, auditions, and trying to secure her place in Hollywood. And yet, according to leaked medical records allegedly tied back to her time in Toronto, she was also living a double life. A secret life. A life that now threatens to unravel everything she spent years building. And who was behind exposing this? None other than her ex-husband, Trevor Engelson. The man she once promised forever to. The man she left behind as she reinvented herself into royalty. The man who, some now claim, is finally striking back with devastating evidence. This isn't tabloid gossip. This isn't a fan theory on some internet forum. We're talking about official-looking documents. Records that suggest Meghan may have given birth in 2011, long before Harry entered the picture. Think about that for a moment. A hidden child, an erased past, a scandal buried deep in the archives of a Toronto hospital, only to re-emerge more than a decade later at the hands of the one person who arguably knows Meghan better than anyone. Why would Trevor reveal this now? Why would he risk legal firestorms, public scrutiny, and the wrath of the world's most controversial royal couple? That's the question we need to answer. And the only way to get there is to peel back the layers of this story, piece by piece, revelation by revelation. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. Now ask yourself, if this is true, what does it mean? How does it change the way we view Meghan's carefully curated rise? From actress to duchess, from outsider to insider, from California girl to royal rebel. Was it all staged on a foundation of secrecy? Or worse, deception? Let's not forget the irony here. Meghan has always positioned herself as an advocate for transparency, openness, and truth-telling. Yet at the center of this storm sits a question that flips her narrative upside down. What if the most important chapter of her past was deliberately erased? And if Trevor Engelson truly did leak these medical records, then this isn't just about Meghan. It's about betrayal, vengeance, and the darker reality of what happens when two people who once loved each other turn into enemies with nothing left to lose. Toronto in 2011 wasn't just the backdrop of Meghan's acting career. It was also the scene of a potential scandal in hiding. Think about the way celebrities often disappear from public life for a few months. They say they're taking time off, or they're working on personal projects. But in reality, those absences sometimes hide life-changing moments. We've seen it before. Stars vanish, only to re-emerge transformed, their secrets buried in the silence of their absence. Could Meghan's time in Toronto fit this pattern? Picture her then, a 30-year-old actress, filming Suits, smiling for red carpets, charming co-stars, networking at industry parties. To the outside world, she was ambitious, driven, relentless in her pursuit of fame. But behind closed doors, if these documents are real, she may have been grappling with something far heavier than just memorizing lines for a legal drama. And here's the kicker. If a child was born, where is that child today? Who is raising them? And how has Meghan managed to keep something so monumental hidden all these years? The emotional stakes here are massive. For Meghan, this isn't just a story about her past. It's a direct threat to her present. Her marriage to Prince Harry was built on the idea of authenticity. He saw her as someone different from the cage of royal expectations. But if this part of her past was concealed, what does that say about the foundation of their relationship? Did Meghan ever tell him? Or has Harry, a man who spent his entire life surrounded by secrets, now found himself entangled in yet another? And let's talk about Trevor for a moment. He isn't some anonymous whistleblower. He was her husband. He lived with her, traveled with her, shared a bed with her. If anyone knows what she wanted to keep hidden, it's him. Which begs the question, is this leak an act of justice, revenge, or both? And doesn't it strike you as chilling that someone who once vowed to protect her is now the very person allegedly tearing down her empire? The world has always been fascinated with the hidden lives of royals and celebrities. But rarely do we get a window this clear, or this explosive. It feels like watching a puzzle where one missing piece suddenly changes the entire picture. Meghan wasn't just an actress clawing her way up. She wasn't just a divorcee finding new love. She may have been a mother long before the world knew her as one. That revelation doesn't just complicate her timeline. It rewrites it. But here's where it gets even more unsettling. If these records were indeed hidden, then powerful hands may have helped keep them buried. Was it Meghan herself, carefully managing her image? Was it Trevor, who stayed quiet until now? Or were others, friends, colleagues, maybe even Hollywood insiders, complicit in maintaining the silence? These are not small questions. These are the kinds of questions that shake not just reputations, but legacies. Imagine the weight of that secret, carrying it through a divorce, carrying it into a new relationship, carrying it into the gilded halls of Buckingham Palace, where every detail of your life is dissected, and then sitting across Oprah, telling the world your truth, while one truth allegedly remained locked away. Can you see the contradiction? Can you feel the tension? That's why this story matters. It's not just scandal for scandal's sake. It's about truth, image, and the way power manipulates both. And now, more than a decade later, that secret seems to have caught up with her. The leak of these medical records isn't just an attack. It's a reminder that no secret stays buried forever. The past has a way of clawing back to the surface, especially when it's laced with betrayal, ambition, and unfinished battles. And with Trevor Engelson as the alleged source, this story becomes more than just rumor. It becomes personal, painfully personal. So where does that leave us? On the brink of something much bigger. Because if the introduction of this story has already shattered so many assumptions, just wait until you see what comes next. The motives, the timeline, the people who may have known the truth. All of it builds into a revelation far larger than one leaked document. And trust me, this is just the beginning. Because what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. Why now? Why, after all these years of silence, would Trevor Engelson allegedly choose this moment to unleash a revelation so devastating that it could obliterate Meghan Markle's carefully crafted public image? That's the question burning at the center of this storm. And the timing couldn't be more suspicious. The royal family is already fractured. Harry and Meghan are constantly under scrutiny. Their image, their marriage, their projects, everything is being dissected under the world's most powerful microscope. And into this chaos steps Trevor, Meghan's ex-husband, holding what he claims to be the ultimate trump card, her past. Think about it. Divorcees usually want nothing to do with their ex-spouse's life once it's over, especially when that ex goes on to marry into one of the most powerful families in the world. Trevor had every reason to stay silent. He had a new wife, a new family, and a new career trajectory. He could have disappeared into Hollywood obscurity and lived comfortably. But instead, he's here, years later, pulling open a locked door Meghan thought she had sealed shut. Why? Revenge? Justice? Or simply the truth finally clawing its way to the surface? Trevor Engelson isn't a nobody. He's a Hollywood producer, someone who knows how stories are told, how narratives are spun, how the press can be played like a violin. And that makes his alleged leak even more dangerous. He knows exactly what happens when a bombshell like this is dropped. He knows the ripple effect, headlines screaming across the world, the internet exploding with theories, and Meghan's credibility being questioned in every corner of the globe. If this was revenge, Trevor picked his moment with surgical precision. But let's rewind. Their marriage wasn't just another Hollywood fling. Meghan and Trevor were together for nearly a decade, long before she met Prince Harry. They met in the early 2000s, when Meghan was still finding her footing as an actress. He was already established in the industry. To many, it looked like a match of ambition, partnership, and shared goals. But behind the scenes, cracks were already forming. Their lives pulled in different directions. Trevor tied to Hollywood in Los Angeles, Meghan building her career in Toronto. Distance, ambition, and ego don't mix well in a marriage. By 2013, the marriage had crumbled. Meghan reportedly sent back her wedding rings in the mail. Cold, calculated, final. Trevor never forgot that sting. Imagine being discarded so bluntly by the person you once thought was your forever. Some say that single act planted the seed of vengeance deep in Trevor's heart. He never spoke publicly, never gave interviews, never lashed out, until now. Until the alleged medical records surfaced. And maybe that's what makes this so believable to some. The silence was too perfect, too controlled. People assumed Trevor had simply moved on. But what if he was biding his time? What if he was waiting for the exact moment when his words would carry the most weight? When Meghan had climbed so high that one revelation could send her tumbling down. The irony is brutal. Meghan left Trevor behind as she reinvented herself into a royal. But it's Trevor who could now define her legacy with a single leak. Now, let's not ignore the emotional complexity here. Trevor wasn't just a distant observer. He lived with Meghan during those years. He saw what the public never saw. He would have known about any major event in her life, especially something as significant as childbirth. That's what makes this so haunting. If the documents are real, then Trevor isn't just speaking as a bitter ex. He's speaking as a witness. Someone with intimate knowledge. Someone who can connect the dots in ways the public never could. But here's the contradiction that makes this even juicier. Trevor has always avoided the spotlight. He remarried, started a family, and built a quiet life. Why jeopardize that peace now? Why risk becoming the villain in Meghan's global narrative? The easy answer is revenge. But the deeper answer? Perhaps Trevor believed the truth needed to come out. Perhaps he felt erased from Meghan's story, replaced in the public eye as if he never existed. And maybe, just maybe, this was his way of reclaiming power. Ask yourself, if you had been cast aside, your marriage reduced to a footnote, and then watched your ex reinvent themselves as royalty, wouldn't you feel tempted to remind the world you once held the real story? That you knew the truth behind the glamour? Trevor's alleged leak doesn't just destroy Meghan's image. It forces the world to remember him, to acknowledge him as the man who was there first. And that's where this story gets darker. Because if Trevor truly wanted revenge, this was the nuclear option. Forget petty interviews or ghost-written books. Medical records are cold, hard evidence. They carry authority. They can't be brushed off as gossip. And when tied to Meghan Markle, a woman whose entire brand rests on her personal narrative, they become dynamite. But was it just Trevor acting alone? Or was he nudged by others, journalists, rivals, even palace insiders, who wanted this truth out? Remember, Trevor isn't the only one who might have motive. Meghan has left behind a trail of people who felt used, discarded, or silenced. Could one of them have partnered with him? Could this be bigger than a scorned ex-husband's revenge? The deeper we dig, the more the timing matters. Why 2025? Why now, when Meghan and Harry are already struggling with public backlash, career pivots, and dwindling popularity? Why unleash a scandal of this scale when Meghan's reputation is already fragile? Perhaps because that's when it would hurt the most. Perhaps Trevor waited for her empire to be on shaky ground before delivering the final blow. And here's the kicker. This isn't just about Meghan. It's about Harry too. Imagine being blindsided by the person you trusted most. Imagine learning that your partner may have hidden something so monumental from you. Trevor's leak doesn't just tarnish Meghan. It threatens Harry's marriage, his credibility, his judgment. Suddenly, the man who gave up his royal role for love might look like a fool who never knew the full truth. And that, in the brutal world of royal politics, is unforgivable. So here we are. Trevor's motives, layered with pain, revenge, and perhaps a dash of justice, set the stage for a revelation that could shake not just Meghan's world, but the monarchy itself. And yet, we've only scratched the surface. Because what happened in Toronto in 2011 was more than just a personal event. It was the beginning of a timeline that Meghan has spent years trying to control. A timeline that, according to the leaked documents, may not be what we thought at all. And as we peel back those years, as we follow Meghan's every move in Toronto, the truth lurking in the shadows grows harder to ignore. But what came next would take this scandal from whispers in Hollywood to headlines that no one could look away from. Toronto, 2011. On the surface, it looked like just another year in Meghan Markle's life. A rising actress landing her breakout role on Suits, attending parties, rubbing shoulders with new friends, and building her future. But when you peel back the glossy exterior, the timeline starts to reveal strange gaps, unexplained absences, and whispers that now, in hindsight, take on an entirely different meaning. If Trevor Engelson's alleged medical records are real, this wasn't just another chapter in Meghan's Hollywood grind. This was the year her hidden past took shape. Think about it. Toronto was the city where Meghan began her transformation. It wasn't Los Angeles, where she had grown up, or London, where she would later reinvent herself as royalty. It was Toronto, neutral ground, a city where she could disappear into anonymity while simultaneously building her career. But have you noticed how certain moments from that year just don't quite add up? Let's walk through the timeline. Suits began filming in early 2011. Meghan's character, Rachel Zane, quickly became a fan favorite. She was smiling in promotional photos, showing up at red carpets, and being photographed with the cast. Everything seemed normal. Yet, eagle-eyed fans and journalists have since pointed out a curious fact. Meghan's public appearances that year weren't as consistent as they should have been for someone breaking into stardom. There were gaps, weeks where Meghan vanished from the spotlight. She wasn't photographed at industry events. She wasn't spotted with her castmates. She wasn't giving interviews. In Hollywood, especially for a rising star, disappearing for long stretches is unusual. Publicity is the lifeline of a budding career. And yet, Meghan seemed strangely absent. So here's the question. What was she doing during those absences? Was she simply exhausted, taking time away from the cameras? Or was something much more significant happening behind the scenes? Whispers in Toronto's entertainment circle hinted at something unusual. A few insiders claimed Meghan's mood and energy shifted abruptly around this period. She went from bubbly and social to more guarded, selective about who she let into her inner circle. Even her friends noticed. And while no one spoke directly at the time, hindsight has a way of making the puzzle pieces fit differently. Could it be that Meghan was hiding something life-changing? Now, let's talk about the physical changes people have speculated on. In some photos from late 2011, Meghan looked slightly different. Her face fuller, her posture more protective. Could it have been stress? Could it have been the demands of her new role? Or was it something else entirely? We've seen this pattern before with celebrities, subtle physical changes, followed by vanishing acts, followed by sudden reemergence with a polished look. It's the classic blueprint for hiding a pregnancy. And then there's the hospital angle. Toronto is home to some of Canada's most discreet private medical facilities. Places where high-profile figures go when they want to keep their business off the record. If the alleged records are true, Meghan might have relied on this very network, trusting that Canadian privacy laws and hospital discretion would protect her. But as we know, secrets don't stay buried forever. Another odd detail from that year? Meghan didn't travel back to Los Angeles as often as she used to. Before Suits, she would frequently return to California, spending time in Hollywood, networking, attending events. But in 2011, her trips became limited. Why? Was it because of the demanding shooting schedule? Or was she anchored in Toronto for more personal reasons? Here's where the contradictions get fascinating. Meghan has always emphasized her independence, her drive, her control over her narrative. Yet, in 2011, her story seems to slip out of her control. People around her noticed inconsistencies. Friends who once gushed about her suddenly stopped speaking publicly. Assistants, publicists, and acquaintances seemed to vanish from her orbit. It's as if a wall went up around Meghan, sealing her off from prying eyes. And in retrospect, that silence speaks volumes. Think about how carefully Meghan has told her story since then. Every interview, every documentary, every book paints her as transparent, honest, willing to share her struggles. But not once, not a single time, has she ever hinted at anything unusual in 2011. Isn't that strange? We know so much about her divorce, her struggles in Hollywood, her romance with Harry, her battles with the palace. But that year? Completely scrubbed from the narrative. Doesn't that feel intentional? And here's the irony. Meghan's career exploded because of Suits, a show about legal secrets, hidden motives, and the tension between truth and lies. While she played a character in front of the camera, was she also hiding her most dramatic role off the camera, protecting a secret that could derail everything? This timeline matters because it anchors the allegations in reality. It's not just about a random rumor or a piece of paper. It's about a pattern. A year where Meghan's public presence dimmed just enough to raise questions, and where the alleged medical records suddenly fit like a missing puzzle piece. If those gaps were filled by something monumental, a child, a birth, a hidden story, then 2011 isn't just another chapter in Meghan's rise. It's the key to understanding everything that followed. Now, let's not forget the human side of this. Imagine Meghan in Toronto, alone in a foreign city, balancing fame and fear. If she did have a child, the emotional toll would have been staggering. Did she feel trapped? Did she feel ashamed? Did she feel empowered? Secrets aren't just about hiding facts. They're about hiding emotions. And emotions leave traces, no matter how hard you try to erase them. And so, the 2011 Toronto timeline becomes more than just a calendar year. It becomes a mystery box. Every unexplained absence, every strange shift, every hushed friend adds to the weight of suspicion. The irony is chilling. While the world was just beginning to notice Meghan Markle the actress, Meghan Markle the woman may have been living a secret life no one saw coming. But here's where things get truly unsettling. Because the timeline doesn't just raise questions, it points directly toward the very documents Trevor Engelson is accused of leaking. Documents that don't just fill the gaps, but expose them in excruciating detail. And once those records emerged, the whispers became headlines. Medical records don't lie? Or do they? That's the haunting question at the center of this entire scandal. Because when Trevor Engelson allegedly leaked those documents from Toronto, the world was forced to confront something unthinkable, that Meghan Markle, the Duchess of Sussex, might have given birth years before anyone knew. And here's where things get really complicated. Medical records are supposed to be the gold standard of truth. They're clinical, factual, untainted by rumor. But in the wrong hands, they become weapons, deadly weapons that can tear reputations to pieces. Let's start with the basics. What did these alleged records actually say? They reportedly listed Meghan's name, the date, the hospital, and one critical word: delivery. The kind of cold, precise terminology doctors use every single day, but that, in this context, becomes explosive. Delivery means birth. Birth means a child. And a child means Meghan's entire narrative has to be rewritten. Now, here's the first twist. How did these records come into Trevor's possession? Think about it. Medical records are among the most protected documents in the world. Hospitals guard them with ironclad laws. So either Trevor had access back then, when he and Meghan were married, or someone on the inside, a whistleblower or a paid informant, provided them. And doesn't that raise another question? If Meghan really went to such lengths to hide this, who else knew? And who else was complicit in keeping it buried? But let's not take these records at face value just yet. Because the world of celebrity scandal is messy. Documents get forged. Stories get twisted. Sometimes, what looks like irrefutable evidence turns out to be smoke and mirrors. Could these papers be fabricated? Could Trevor have been duped? Or worse, deliberately staging a leak to destroy Meghan's credibility? That's the double-edged sword here. The records are either the most damning piece of evidence against Meghan or the most dangerous hoax of her career. Ask yourself this. Why do medical leaks have so much power? It's because they strike at the heart of privacy. Gossip about affairs or money can be brushed aside, but medical records carry an aura of legitimacy. They make us believe we're seeing something forbidden, something raw. That's why tabloids salivate over them. They strip away the glamour and expose the human. And for Meghan Markle, who has built her empire on controlling her story, this kind of exposure is lethal. Now, picture the scene. These documents surface online. Screenshots spreading like wildfire. Hashtags erupting. Media outlets picking up the whispers. Some outlets calling it shocking truth. Others calling it baseless invasion. The frenzy begins. And at the center of it all, one woman's name typed in black and white, attached to a date in 2011. A date that doesn't fit with the narrative Meghan has fed the world. But here's where it gets even darker. If these records are legitimate, why didn't anyone notice sooner? Was there a cover-up? Did Meghan have help burying the truth? Remember, Toronto in 2011 wasn't just Meghan's workplace. It was her refuge. She had friends, assistants, handlers, even powerful acquaintances. Could one of them have pulled strings to keep her secret? Could someone have ensured the records stayed hidden until Trevor, or whoever helped him, pulled them out of the shadows? And what about the emotional punch behind all this? Imagine Meghan seeing her private life, her most intimate medical history, plastered across the internet. It's not just about whether the story is true. It's about the humiliation of being stripped bare, of losing control. Meghan has always insisted on controlling the narrative, from her Hollywood interviews to her Netflix documentaries. And suddenly, with one leak, that control is gone. Utterly gone. There's also a chilling irony here. Meghan and Harry have sued newspapers, media companies, even private investigators for invading their privacy. They've spent millions protecting their image. And yet, here is the ultimate invasion. Her body, her health, her alleged motherhood, exposed without her consent. Does that make her a victim, or does it make her a hypocrite if she really did hide the truth? That's for the audience to decide. Let's not ignore the ripple effect. If the medical records are genuine, they don't just reveal a hidden child. They undermine everything Meghan has said about her journey. They change her love story with Harry. They raise questions about the children we already know, Archie and Lilibet. Were they her first, or not? And in the cutthroat world of royal image-making, even the smallest contradiction can be fatal. But here's where the story twists again. Some analysts point out discrepancies, dates that don't quite align, formatting that looks slightly off. Could this mean the records were altered? Or could it be that Trevor only leaked part of the file, keeping the rest hidden for maximum impact? Imagine the suspense of holding back the most damning detail, waiting until Meghan makes her next public move before dropping the final bombshell. That's the kind of psychological warfare Trevor could be playing. So where does this leave us? With more questions than answers. Did Meghan truly give birth in Toronto in 2011? Are the records authentic, or are they carefully crafted fakes? Did Trevor act alone, or is there a bigger machine behind this leak? One thing is certain. The moment those documents surfaced, Meghan's world shifted forever. The polished facade cracked. The whispers turned into roars. And no amount of PR spin can erase the fact that once the idea of a hidden child is out there, it can never be pulled back. And yet, as explosive as these records are, they're not the only clue. Because as we trace Meghan's life in Toronto, something else becomes clear. The people closest to her, the friends who knew her best, were already acting strangely. And their silence might be the loudest evidence of all. But what came next would drag Meghan's inner circle into the scandal and expose the one friend who may have known everything. Silence can be deafening, can't it? And in Meghan Markle's case, the silence of her closest friends in Toronto around 2011 is the detail that has fueled the fire more than any leaked document ever could. Because when your inner circle, the very people who should be your loudest defenders, suddenly go quiet, it begs the question, what do they know that the rest of us don't? Let's rewind to that year. Meghan was filming Suits, establishing herself as a recognizable face on American television. She wasn't yet a household name, but she was on her way. Like any rising actress, she surrounded herself with a close-knit group of friends. These weren't just casual acquaintances. These were people who knew her secrets, her habits, her moods. They were the ones she called late at night, the ones who saw her when the cameras weren't rolling. And yet, in the years that followed, when Meghan's name exploded into the global spotlight, some of those very friends chose silence over loyalty. Why? Take Jessica Mulroney, for example. At one point, she was widely described as Meghan's best friend. The two were inseparable in Toronto, attending parties, dinners, and social events. Jessica was even rumored to have helped Meghan navigate the fashion choices that would later cement her as a style icon. But when the whispers about Meghan's past began to resurface, Jessica said nothing. No denial, no passionate defense, just silence. And silence, in the world of scandal, can be more damning than words. Now, let's be clear, friends fall out all the time. Relationships fade, especially under the strain of fame. But in this context, with Trevor Engelson allegedly leaking medical records, that silence becomes suspicious. If you were Meghan's best friend and you knew the records were false, wouldn't you shout it from the rooftops? Wouldn't you release a statement, tweet your outrage, or at least quietly assure the public that it was all nonsense? And yet, that didn't happen. Then there are her colleagues from Suits. Co-stars who, at the height of Meghan's royal drama, were quick to praise her talent, her drive, her work ethic. But none of them, not one, has ever spoken in detail about Meghan's personal life during those years. Isn't that strange? Normally, actors love to reminisce, to share behind-the-scenes anecdotes. But when it comes to Meghan's 2011 timeline, it's as though the entire set was under a code of silence. Let's dig even deeper. Meghan had assistants, publicists, and stylists in Toronto. People whose job it was to manage her schedule, her appearances, her look. These are the kinds of people who notice everything. When someone disappears for a few weeks, when appointments are suddenly canceled, when unusual instructions come down the chain. And yet, if you try to find comments from these individuals, you'll hit a wall. Either they've vanished from public view or they've chosen not to say a word. Again, silence. Now, think about human nature. When someone is accused of something they didn't do, their friends usually rush to defend them. That's ridiculous. I was with her that day. I know her. She would never. I saw her all the time. There was no secret. That's what you expect. But here, nothing. And doesn't that make you wonder? Of course, skeptics might argue that Meghan's friends were simply respecting her privacy. That's possible. But let's not ignore the pressure Meghan may have put on them. Meghan has always been known for carefully curating her image. Could she have asked her friends to keep quiet? Could there have been financial incentives, NDAs, or simply fear of retribution if they spoke out? Hollywood and high society thrive on loyalty, but also on fear. And yet, even silence speaks volumes. Because silence creates space for speculation. And speculation breeds scandal. When Trevor's alleged medical records emerged, people immediately asked, what about her friends? Did they know? Were they covering for her? And in that vacuum of answers, the conspiracy theories multiplied. But here's the part that gives this theory its sharpest edge. There was reportedly one friend, just one, who confided privately to an acquaintance that Meghan wasn't the same after 2011. A vague comment, but loaded with meaning. What did they mean by not the same? Did she seem more guarded? More protective? Was there an emotional weight she carried that no one else understood? That single comment has fueled endless debates. Was it just about career stress, or something far more personal? The contradictions are impossible to ignore. Meghan's brand has always been built on openness, on connecting with people, on telling her truth. And yet, the people closest to her during the most critical year of her alleged secret life refused to tell theirs. Isn't that the ultimate irony? Now imagine yourself in Meghan's shoes. You've worked tirelessly to reinvent yourself, to build a global brand on authenticity. But deep down, you know there are people, friends, colleagues, exes, who hold pieces of a puzzle you never want completed. How do you sleep at night, knowing that one text message, one careless comment, or one leaked file could bring it all crashing down? This is why Trevor's alleged leak cuts so deep. Because if her friends had truly been loyal, if they had gone on record to defend her, the documents might have been dismissed as a fabrication. But their silence created doubt. And doubt, in the public eye, is as destructive as proof. So here we are. The friends who knew too much, the colleagues who stayed quiet, the inner circle whose loyalty was measured in silence. And among them, one friend whose cryptic comment might just hold the key to it all. But what about the supposed child at the center of this storm? If the documents are true, if Meghan did give birth in 2011, where is that child now? And that question is the one Meghan fears the most. If the records are real, if Meghan Markle truly gave birth in Toronto in 2011, then the most haunting question of all rises to the surface. Where is the child? Because secrets like this don't vanish into thin air. A birth isn't just a moment. It's a life. A human being. A son or daughter who, by now, would be a teenager. And the mystery surrounding that child is what makes this scandal so explosive, because it's not simply about Meghan's past anymore. It's about a life that might have been hidden in plain sight. Let's pause and think about this. Meghan has built her global brand on motherhood. Every photo of her cradling Archie, every video of her speaking about maternal love, every public image of her holding Lilibet has been carefully framed as the centerpiece of her identity. But if there was another child before them, what does that do to her narrative? What does that say about the truth she has been selling the world for years? Now, there are a few theories. The first is adoption. Some suggest that if Meghan gave birth in 2011, she may have chosen to give the child up for adoption. Adoption isn't shameful. It's a choice many women make under difficult circumstances. But for someone like Meghan, who later styled herself as the perfect mother, could she have risked the public backlash of revealing she once gave up a baby? Imagine the headlines. Imagine the accusations of hypocrisy. That fear alone might have driven her to bury the truth. The second theory is that the child was raised quietly, perhaps by family members or trusted friends. Meghan's mother, Doria Ragland, has always been a mysterious figure in Meghan's story, appearing occasionally, then vanishing for long stretches. Could she have played a role in shielding this child? Could other close allies in Toronto or Los Angeles have stepped in, helping Meghan maintain her image while ensuring the child lived a private life? And then there's the third, darker theory, that Meghan deliberately erased the child from her public timeline, raising them in secret, hidden from the cameras, the press, even Harry himself. We've seen celebrities attempt this before, stars who managed to keep children out of the spotlight for years, only for the truth to eventually surface. But in Meghan's case, the stakes are astronomically higher. A hidden child would not just be a private matter. It would be a royal scandal. Now, let's talk about the emotional side of this. If Meghan truly did have a child before Harry, imagine the guilt and fear she would carry every day. Guilt for keeping the child hidden, fear of exposure, anxiety about the consequences if the world ever found out. That weight doesn't just disappear. It leaks into your behavior, your decisions, your relationships. Could this explain some of Meghan's contradictions? The moments where she seemed overly defensive, overly controlling of her image, almost paranoid about leaks? Could it all stem from this one secret? And what about Harry? If he didn't know, if Meghan kept this from him, what does that do to their marriage? Harry has always said he wanted a family, not an institution. He prided himself on escaping the lies and secrecy of royal life. But what if the woman he chose to build that family with was carrying the biggest secret of all? That kind of revelation could shatter trust, not just between them, but with the entire world watching. Here's where the contradictions get sharp. Meghan and Harry sued newspapers for publishing a private letter. They demanded privacy for their children. They built a brand on transparency. And yet, if she really had a hidden child, doesn't that undermine every fight they've waged against the press? The irony is brutal. Now let's push this further. Imagine the identity of that child eventually coming to light. A teenager stepping into the media storm, claiming their place in the story. What would that mean for Meghan? For the royal family? For Archie and Lilibet, who would suddenly have an older sibling the world never knew existed? The very idea is destabilizing. It would shake the foundations of the monarchy, Meghan's public image, and Harry's trust. But perhaps the most chilling possibility is this. Maybe Meghan has been preparing for this day all along. Maybe her constant battles with the press, her relentless control over her story, her obsession with curating her image, all of it has been a shield. A desperate attempt to protect herself from the one secret that could destroy her. And now, with Trevor Engelson allegedly pulling back the curtain, that shield is cracking. Ask yourself, how far would you go to protect a secret like this? Would you silence friends? Would you bury documents? Would you rewrite your own history to ensure the world never knew? Because if Meghan truly had a child in 2011, that's exactly what she's been doing for over a decade. And yet, here we are. The whispers have become shouts. The questions are louder than ever. And the world is left to wonder, where's the child? But the scandal doesn't stop there. Because once Meghan's alleged hidden past collided with her future, once she stepped into Prince Harry's life, this secret transformed from a personal mystery into a royal crisis. And that's when the fairy tale romance turned into something far darker. Fairy tales are supposed to begin with once upon a time. For Meghan and Harry, the story was sold to us like a modern-day fairy tale. The glamorous American actress meets the handsome prince, love conquers all, and they ride off into the sunset. But if Trevor Engelson's alleged records are real, then the foundations of that story are cracked. Because when Meghan walked into Harry's life, she wasn't the fresh, unburdened woman the palace believed her to be. She was, perhaps, a woman carrying a secret that could have changed everything before the romance even began. Let's rewind to the fateful meeting in 2016. Meghan and Harry were introduced through mutual friends. Sparks flew immediately, or so the narrative tells us. Harry has repeatedly said he was struck by her independence, her confidence, her ability to thrive outside the royal bubble. But here's the question. Did Harry really know everything about Meghan when he fell in love with her? Or did she carefully curate her past, leaving out the one chapter that could have ended their story before it even began? Imagine it. Harry, a man haunted by the press, a man who grew up watching his mother, Princess Diana, hounded to her death. believed he had finally found someone who could stand beside him with honesty and resilience. And yet, if Meghan had hidden a child, if she had concealed that truth, then the irony is staggering. Harry escaped one world of secrets only to walk straight into another. This isn't just speculation. It's a contradiction that cuts to the core of their marriage. Meghan has often spoken about how transparent she was with Harry, how open their conversations were, how they built trust from the very beginning. But trust isn't built on half-truths. Trust is built on full disclosure. And if a child existed in her past, then what did Harry really agree to? A love story, or a carefully managed illusion? The palace certainly thought it was a love story. When Meghan first met the Queen, insiders described it as a moment of excitement, of possibility. The monarchy, bruised and aging, seemed revitalized by the presence of this glamorous newcomer. But what if palace insiders had known? What if, during their meticulous background checks, whispers of 2011 had surfaced? What if the palace had even asked Meghan about it? Can you picture the panic? The calculated calm she would have needed to deny or deflect. The stakes were life-changing. A royal marriage isn't just about love, it's about legacy. And Meghan's alleged secret would have been seen as a stain on that legacy. Now, let's not forget the public. At the time, Meghan was celebrated as a fresh face, someone unlike any woman who had married into the royal family before. Divorced, yes, but relatable. Independent, yes, but charming. She was a breath of fresh air. And yet, how different would that reception have been if the world had known about a hidden child? Would the British press have turned even more viciously against her? Would Harry's friends in the aristocracy, many of whom already looked down on Meghan, have used that detail to drive a wedge between them? The irony here is painful. Meghan and Harry often spoke about rewriting the royal rulebook, about modernizing the monarchy, about breaking barriers. And yet, this one alleged secret, if true, would have aligned them with the very thing they despised most: deception. Secrets hidden from the public. Truths managed for the sake of appearances. The very game Harry claimed he wanted to escape. But let's humanize this for a moment. Imagine Meghan, sitting across from Harry during those early days of dating. The butterflies, the excitement, the thrill of falling in love. And then imagine the pit in her stomach, knowing that she might be holding back something so monumental. Every time Harry opened up about his life, his trauma, his fears, Meghan would have had to decide, do I tell him, or do I stay silent? And with each decision to stay silent, the weight of the secret grew heavier. That kind of tension doesn't just disappear, it festers. And here's where Trevor Engelson's alleged leak cuts deepest. Because if Harry didn't know, then Trevor's revelation wasn't just aimed at Meghan, it was aimed at Harry too. A direct strike at his judgment, his love, his marriage. Trevor wasn't just exposing Meghan's past. He was exposing Harry's blind spot. And in the brutal world of royal politics, that blind spot is unforgivable. Ask yourself, how does a man like Harry, who gave up everything for love, react to the possibility that love wasn't what he thought it was? Does he double down, defending Meghan no matter what? Or does he quietly begin to question, to wonder, to doubt? That's the tragedy of this story. Because even if the truth never comes out fully, the doubt has already been planted. And that's why this chapter matters so much. Meghan's alleged hidden child doesn't just rewrite her story, it rewrites theirs. It casts a shadow over the fairy tale, turning it into something darker, something more fragile. And for a royal couple already under fire from every angle, that shadow could be the breaking point. But here's where the tension escalates even further. Because while Meghan was presenting herself as the perfect match for Harry, the palace itself was watching. And behind closed doors, insiders were asking questions no one dared voice publicly. And those suspicions were about to explode into something even more dangerous. What did the royals know, and when did they know it? That's the question that has haunted this entire scandal. Because if the whispers of Meghan's alleged hidden child in Toronto ever reached Buckingham Palace, then the stakes weren't just personal. They were institutional. They were about protecting the monarchy itself. And you can bet that if there was even a shred of truth to the story, palace insiders would have moved heaven and earth to keep it under wraps. Let's set the stage. By the time Meghan entered Harry's life in 2016, the palace was already wary. The monarchy had weathered decades of scandal, from Edward VIII abdicating for Wallis Simpson, to Diana's tragic death, to Prince Andrew's disgrace. The last thing they needed was another headline that could destabilize the crown. So when Harry introduced Meghan, aides, advisors, and courtiers began digging. Background checks, media vetting, quiet inquiries into her past. That's how it always works. No one marries into the royal family without scrutiny. And here's where the tension explodes. What if those inquiries uncovered whispers about 2011? A hospital visit in Toronto, strange absences from filming suits, friends who refused to speak, documents that, if exposed, could humiliate the crown. Imagine the panic in those palace corridors. Meghan wasn't just another girlfriend. She was a potential duchess, a future face of the monarchy. And with her came a secret so volatile that it could destroy the royal family's carefully managed image. Now, think about the pattern. The British press has always been relentless when it comes to royal romances. They dig, they pry, they sensationalize. But in Meghan's case, certain areas of her past seemed unusually quiet. Too quiet. As if someone had drawn a curtain over 2011 and declared it off-limits. Could that have been the palace at work? Could aides have pressured media outlets not to touch that story, knowing it would cause irreparable damage? Let's remember how the monarchy operates. When a threat emerges, they don't always confront it directly. They smother it. They bury it. They suppress it until it disappears. But the danger with suppression is that it never truly erases the truth. It only delays it. And now, with Trevor Engelson allegedly leaking medical records, all those suppressed whispers are roaring back with a vengeance. Imagine being in those palace meetings. Advisors around the table, Harry pleading for them to accept Meghan, courtiers warning of skeletons in her closet. The Queen, pragmatic as always, weighing duty against personal happiness. Did they know? Did they suspect? Or did they choose to look the other way, hoping the truth would never come out? Here's the irony. Meghan and Harry often claim the palace failed to protect them, that the monarchy let the press run wild, feeding Meghan to the wolves. But what if, behind the scenes, the palace was already protecting her, just not in the way she thought? What if they were shielding her from the one story that could have ended everything before it began? And yet, even with the palace's silence, insiders have long whispered that doubts lingered. Some senior royals reportedly felt Meghan wasn't being entirely honest, that her polished story had missing pieces. And in a family obsessed with bloodlines, heritage, and heirs, a hidden child would be the ultimate betrayal. Because this wasn't just about Meghan, it was about the future of the monarchy. Let's not forget the symbolism. Every royal marriage is more than love. It's about continuity, stability, and legitimacy. If Meghan had a hidden child, even one outside the royal bloodline, it would cast a shadow over her children with Harry. Archie and Lilibet wouldn't just be royal heirs. They'd be heirs with a question mark attached. And the monarchy cannot afford question marks. Now picture this. Palace aides racing against time, trying to keep Meghan's past under wraps, while Harry fell deeper in love. The fear must have been suffocating. If the truth surfaced, it would be a disaster, not just for Meghan, but for the monarchy's reputation. But if they ignored it, if they pretended it didn't exist, then they were gambling with the crown itself. It's a lose-lose scenario, the kind of dilemma the monarchy has faced for centuries. So ask yourself, was the palace complicit in hiding Meghan's past, or were they simply blindsided by her? Did they knowingly usher in a woman carrying a secret so dangerous it could destabilize the monarchy? Or were they victims of the same carefully curated narrative that fooled the world? One thing is certain. If the palace suspected anything, their silence wasn't an act of protection. It was an act of survival. And survival is the monarchy's oldest instinct. But silence has consequences. Because once Trevor Engelson stepped into the spotlight with his alleged leak, the palace's carefully constructed wall of secrecy shattered. And the fallout wasn't just about Meghan anymore. It was about how much the royals knew and how much they hid from the public. And that brings us to the man at the center of it all, the ex-husband, the ghost from Meghan's past who refused to stay silent any longer. Because Trevor Engelson wasn't finished. Not by a long shot. For years, Trevor Engelson was little more than a footnote in Meghan Markle's story. Mentioned briefly in interviews, reduced to a single line in biographies, Meghan was married once before to Hollywood producer Trevor Engelson. That was it. No details, no depth, no spotlight. He was erased, as though he had never mattered. But now Trevor Engelson is the man standing at the center of Meghan's biggest scandal, allegedly armed with the very evidence that could unravel her carefully controlled empire. And the question is, why now? Trevor's silence for nearly a decade was almost eerie. Think about it. Here was a man who had every reason to speak out. Meghan ended their marriage abruptly, sending her wedding rings back in the mail. She left him behind as she reinvented herself, climbing her way into royal circles. She gave interviews where Trevor's name was barely mentioned, as though he had been nothing more than a stepping stone. Most men would have lashed out, written tell-all books, sold stories to the tabloids. Trevor did none of that. He remarried, started a family, and built a quiet life. For years, it looked like he had truly moved on. But silence doesn't always mean peace. Sometimes silence means patience. And Trevor's alleged leak feels less like a random act and more like a carefully calculated strike. He waited until Meghan was at the height of her public contradictions, her brand tarnished, her popularity slipping, her marriage with Harry under strain. He waited for the moment when one revelation could inflict maximum damage. And then, like a match dropped into gasoline, the record surfaced. But let's not forget, Trevor wasn't just Meghan's ex-husband. He was her partner for nearly a decade. He saw her during the years that matter most to this scandal. He was there in the late 2000s, when Meghan was struggling to land roles. He was there in the early 2010s, when she moved to Toronto for Suits. If Meghan did give birth in 2011, Trevor would have been the one closest to that moment. He would have known. He would have felt the ripple effects. That's what makes his alleged involvement so devastating, because it gives the claims credibility. Now, let's consider Trevor's motive. Was this revenge? Almost certainly. Being discarded the way Meghan allegedly discarded him isn't something a man forgets. She mailed back the rings. She cut him out of her narrative. And then she rose to global fame, leaving him branded as the ex-husband of a duchess, nothing more. Imagine watching your former wife reinvent herself as a global superstar, as royalty, while you were left erased. That sting doesn't fade. It festers. But maybe this wasn't just revenge. Maybe Trevor saw himself as delivering the truth. Maybe he thought the world needed to know the real Meghan. A woman who wasn't the transparent truth-teller she claimed to be, but someone who had mastered the art of omission, of hiding, of burying her past. If that's how Trevor saw it, then this leak wasn't just about hurting Meghan. It was about rewriting her story with what he believed was reality. Here's the irony. Meghan built her royal exit on the idea of truth. She accused the palace of lying, of suppressing her voice, of silencing her. And now Trevor has flipped that narrative, accusing Meghan of being the one who lied, who silenced, who suppressed. The battle isn't just personal, it's symbolic. Who owns the truth? But let's not underestimate the danger Trevor has stepped into. If he really did leak medical records, he's put himself in legal jeopardy. Privacy laws in Canada are strict. So why risk it? Why step into the fire after years of peace? Perhaps Trevor believes that Meghan has no power left to stop him. The palace won't protect her. Harry can't control him. And the public, hungry for scandal, will protect him by sheer volume of attention. Ask yourself this. If you were Trevor Engelson, would you stay silent forever? Or would you eventually want your voice heard, your story told, your truth acknowledged? Silence might be noble, but it doesn't erase betrayal. And in Trevor's eyes, Meghan's betrayal wasn't just personal, it was public. She took their private life, stripped it of meaning, and sold a fairy tale. His alleged leak is his way of reclaiming his role in the story, forcing the world to remember that he existed, that he mattered. Now let's consider what this means moving forward. Trevor's bombshell wasn't just a one-time strike. It was a signal. If he has documents, if he has proof, what else does he have? Emails, photos, testimonies from people who were there. This could be the tip of the iceberg. Meghan has always relied on controlling the narrative. But if Trevor truly has more to reveal, then Meghan is fighting a war she can't win, because the ammunition isn't in her hands anymore. And that's the terrifying part. Because once Trevor opened the door, the media rushed in. And suddenly, the whispers about Meghan's past weren't confined to hidden corners anymore. They were screaming from headlines across the globe. Once Trevor Engelson lit the match, the media didn't just report on the leak, they feasted on it. This wasn't just another royal headline about outfits, charity appearances, or mild family feuds. This was raw, alleged medical records, claims of a hidden child, the kind of scandal that tabloids dream about. And overnight, Meghan Markle's story shifted from Duchess in exile to woman with secrets. Picture the frenzy. Front pages screaming, Meghan's hidden past. Online outlets pushing push notifications to millions of phones. Talk shows dissecting the documents line by line, speculating on the details, questioning the authenticity. Social media? Exploding. Hashtags like hashtag Meghan Secret Child, hashtag Toronto 2011, and hashtag Trevor Leaks trending worldwide. Within hours, the story wasn't just in Britain or Canada, it was global. From New York to Sydney, from Nairobi to Tokyo, everyone was asking the same question. Could it be true? Now, let's examine why the story spread so quickly. First, because it fit into an already existing narrative. Meghan and Harry had spent years cultivating their truth-telling brand, accusing the palace of lies, accusing the press of bullying. But now, the roles were reversed. Suddenly, Meghan was the one accused of lying. Suddenly, she was the one with something to hide. The irony was irresistible to journalists. Second, because the alleged documents weren't gossip. They had the veneer of legitimacy. A hospital name, a date, medical terminology, things that make a story feel credible. Even if experts debated whether the documents were authentic, the average person scrolling through Twitter or Facebook didn't care. To them, it looked real. And in the age of viral news, perception matters more than proof. And then there was the visual element. Screenshots of the supposed records circulated like wildfire. Watermarks blurred, names highlighted. People zoomed in, analyzing fonts, signatures, stamps. Amateur detectives filled YouTube and TikTok with evidence breakdowns, pointing to inconsistencies, or worse, pointing to details that proved it was real. The internet doesn't wait for official confirmation. It builds its own narrative, and once it catches fire, no PR team in the world can put it out. Of course, mainstream outlets played their usual game. Some cautiously framed it as unverified claims, careful not to get sued. Others went all in, treating the story as fact. And in doing so, they forced Meghan into the worst possible position. Defend herself and risk drawing more attention, or stay silent and let the story grow unchecked. Either way, she loses. And here's the irony that no one missed. Meghan and Harry had built an entire Netflix series, a Spotify deal, and a string of interviews around telling their truth. They had weaponized the media for their narrative. But now, the media had turned against them. The very tool Meghan once used was now being used to destroy her. That's not just poetic, it's brutal. The frenzy didn't stop with Meghan. Royal commentators immediately pounced. Some suggested the palace must have known all along. Others claimed this explained why Meghan had such a rocky relationship with senior royals. Conspiracy theories bloomed like weeds. Was this why William never warmed to her? Was this why the Queen seemed cautious? Was this why Charles was so quick to distance himself after Megxit? The speculation was endless, feeding the public's appetite for drama. But perhaps the most powerful part of the media storm was the emotional reaction. For Meghan's supporters, it was a moment of rallying. They called it a smear campaign, an invasion of privacy, a desperate attempt to break a strong woman. For her critics, it was validation, the smoking gun they had been waiting for. And in the middle stood the undecided public, torn between empathy and suspicion. That's what makes stories like this so lethal. They divide, they polarize, and they stick. Now, think about how Meghan must have felt watching this unfold. Every headline, every hashtag, every panel discussion was a reminder that her private past was now a global obsession. Her children's names trended alongside accusations of a hidden sibling. Her marriage was dissected in real time. Her brand, already fragile, was crumbling under the weight of speculation. And the cruelest part? She couldn't stop it. Because once the media smells blood, there's no going back. One outlet's rumor becomes another outlet's report. One tweet becomes a trending topic. And before you know it, speculation hardens into belief. But amid the chaos, something even more dangerous began to take shape. Because while the media shouted and speculated, the public itself started to divide into camps. Loyal defenders, ruthless critics, and millions caught in between, wondering who Meghan Markle really is. And when the public divides, the story doesn't fade. It grows. It mutates. It becomes bigger than Meghan, bigger than Trevor, bigger than the royals themselves. The headlines were one thing, the hashtags another. But the true storm erupted in the hearts and minds of the public. Because scandals don't just live on paper or screens. They live in the conversations at kitchen tables, in whispered debates at coffee shops, in endless arguments across social media. And when Trevor Engelson's alleged leak hit, the world didn't just consume the story, it divided over it. On one side were Meghan's defenders. They saw the leak as nothing more than a character assassination. They argued that Trevor was bitter, jealous, unable to let go of the woman who had left him behind and risen to unimaginable heights. Why should we trust a man she left years ago, they asked. Why should we believe a document that may have been tampered with? For them, Meghan was the victim yet again, hounded by exes, betrayed by friends, attacked by tabloids. And in their eyes, this scandal was just another example of a powerful woman being torn down for daring to live her truth.